Welcome to Bets on the Future, where we highlight the various career paths in the electrifying metals world. From the vehicle you ride in to the bridge holding it up, metals are everywhere. Why not in your career too? I'm Jennifer Betts, a metals industry veteran with almost 20 years experience, here to highlight these incredible career paths as told by the women who are living them. Today, we have a true industry leader joining us. Please give a warm welcome to Rosa Laxamana, VP of Sustainability for Granges Americas. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table in regards to the metals industry. With the Swedish heritage of the company, Rosa and the team at Granges Americas have achieved remarkable success in carbon reduction through increased recycling. Get ready for an enlightening conversation about all things in the aluminum world. Get ready to be inspired by her unique insights. Thank you so much, Rosa, for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. And welcome to Nashville. This is kind of the Mecca, the it city. Lots happening here, and we're really excited that ISRI came to Nashville here right in our backyard. So fantastic for us and my company, Granges Americas, who's only about 20 minutes south of here. So quick and easy journey up here to Nashville to meet up with you.
It's been fantastic. And for those who may not be familiar with what ISRI is, it's the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries. It's essentially the Recycling World's Association for North America. And so we are going to be talking about all the different variety of career paths in the metals industry. And this week I'm at a recycling event for that. And we also have the VP of Sustainability, which obviously recycling plays a huge factor in that as well. So Rosa, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think recycling is really interesting for us. We have understood now that the carbon footprint is really important. And with recycling, that is a huge initiative for us. So excited to talk about kind of our journey and what we've done so far with the recycling world.
Wonderful. Well, I do want to get into your history, but for those who are unfamiliar with what Granges America is, can you give a brief overview of what your company does?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were founded in Sweden. So we're about 125 years old, and we have facilities in Sweden and Poland, in China, and we have 3 rolling mills in the United States. So here in the US, we make uncladded aluminum, and we make it for a range of different industries, whether it's HVAC, automotive, it could be flexible packaging, it could be building materials, array of different customers. But in the US, we have 3 rolling facilities where we make this sustainable aluminum for our customer base.
That's fantastic. So I want to go down a little bit about your history. I come from a finance background, and I, through a random career fair in college, found the recycling industry. How did you find this career path? Did you go to school for this? How did you know about it before school?
Yeah, so that's a super interesting question. Actually have had 0 experience, didn't go to school for it, and didn't really know much about it. So growing up, my parents immigrated here from Germany, and we kind of lived off the land, and my parents did a lot with recycling and reusing. And, when you are trying to figure out how you can consolidate and reuse things from a financial standpoint, you really use everything that you have. So growing up, I had a real love for the earth. People kind of call me a crunchy granola tree hugger because I do love everything outside. That's where you can find me on weekends. But I didn't really understand anything from a job about that. I went to college. I got a degree actually in exercise because I love the body, and I love just learning more about how you can change your body and what you can do to that. And then I spent probably the last 15 years in supply chain, working for either private companies or public companies. And I love supply chain because it's never a dull day. In that. But moving on, I was trying to do something that was a little closer to home. I was driving pretty far. This was pre-COVID, working for a company that was really pretty far from my house. And then I just stumbled upon Granges, and they had a supply chain position open. So I did that for the first year, working in their supply chain department, but then started just taking on a couple of projects here and there. And they came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to do sustainability?" And I said, "I don't really know what that is." And they said, "You can figure it out." So that's kind of how I've landed in this position. So it's been really exciting over the last year just to see all the things. It's really connected me with everybody in our business, all the way down to our customers, our suppliers, all the different departments. I mean, it takes a huge amount of people to move a company in a sustainable direction. And so we have everybody from metal purchasers, we have folks who focus on the energy and the efficiencies. We have project directors who are looking at making our facilities, anytime we invest and grow them, making them more sustainable. So it's a really interesting mecca of people who surround sustainability. But that's kind of how I fell into it.
That's very interesting. I feel like that's how most people find this industry, this career path. There isn't a school that you go to for this. There isn't a specific degree for, recycling. I believe there are some more in the sustainable world that are coming to fruition. But, when you and I started our career paths, that wasn't an option. And so that's a big push of, why I'm so excited to have you on this podcast, to be able to showcase in the next generation that there are completely viable career paths for individuals that match what they love to do on the personal side, what they're passionate about on the personal side, that also aligns with being able to support, a life, right? Financially, because obviously at the end of the day, you still have to pay bills. Yeah. And it's great that you can match up the two, especially with, your passion for, physical fitness and the environment and getting outside and enjoying the planet. To be able to match that with your career I have to imagine it's a pretty great feeling for you.
Yeah, it's absolutely exciting. And I think I agree with you 100%. Nowadays, there is many more doors that you can open. We actually have a lot of engineers that work for us. And in my mind, I always thought an engineer was somebody who just works on a machine, but there's so many more engineers out there, whether it's an energy engineer or a process engineer or a digitalization engineer who's making something more efficient to use less energy. So we actually have a lot of engineer positions now that kind of fall within the sustainability initiatives and moves the company forward. But I think as we continue to grow, as companies turn to initiatives to make themselves greener and more marketable, especially because that's what these consumers want. That's what every consumer wants, including myself. Looking for something that's a greener option and leaving the planet kind of better than we found it. So I think going forward, there will be a lot more opportunities for folks to be in kind of their area of expertise and the things that they love personally, and kind of combine them into a professional role that they can be in for a long time.
Based on what you know now, what would you recommend or suggest for somebody that wants to get into this field? How would you suggest they go about doing it, from either schooling or networking with individuals or companies to get into this?
Yeah, I think nowadays you have, social media at your fingertips. I think you can easily go out there and Google any topic that you're looking for, whether it is metals industry. It could be an array of different things. I mean, we have a lot of safety folks that work for us as well. We have, somebody who's in the molten metal specialist position. So again, I think social media has helped kind of open up that idea that what's there. Coming from maybe some small towns, you may not understand that there's companies out there that are global companies, and they work in lots of different regions of the world and different states, even in the US. So I think Googling kind of what you're interested in, but then I think it's really, what is your passion? If you're a, data analyst, if you are a projects director, if you are an engineer, if you are, really passionate about safety and health safety of folks, I think there's really lots of different areas of the business that you could work in. And so it's really finding a passion that you love. And I think, working for a global company is always fantastic, because you're able to partner with different folks across the world who do things differently than you. So there's different thinking. There's really this kind of tag team of seeing what they've done, what's worked. And with us, I think, having our roots based in Europe, it gives us a little bit more insight from a sustainability standpoint of what have you done from an energy perspective. And in the US, the recycling portion has been much more accessible here for us. So what we've done with our journey is really a learning for, our partners in China, where they don't have as much recycling, and that it's not really available there. So I think, for somebody looking in this field, whether it is finding a degree that you can do in this, or if you're really just wanting to be in the metals industry, is like, there's lots of types of metals. You could be in aluminum, you could be in steel, you could be in copper. There's so many types, and it's really exciting. Even speaking with some of our technical folks, when they start talking about the grains of aluminum under a microscope, I start to kind of lose focus. But then they show me some pictures, and it is so interesting looking at, what this looks like. And I would have never known. I mean, the first time I stood in front of a furnace and they opened the door up, I thought I was standing in front of a sun. But it was so neat. It was so interesting because the day-to-day consumer doesn't see that, right? You pick up your iPhone, you don't realize that half of that is aluminum. You don't know where it comes from. And then the first time you see it, it like opens up this whole new world of what's going on out there from, upstream of you purchasing whatever it is that you're buying, a house, a AC unit, a car, AirPods, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. People don't realize that the car that they drive is probably their former washer and dryer, or the beverage container that they're using, the water bottle, right? That's probably part of that, depending on where they buy it, which country it's from, is recycled from something else that they had already used and put into, the blue bin, if you will. When I joined this industry, I did it very naively. I looked at it as, great, they're going to give me a company car, they're going to give me an expense account, and I got to go travel the country, and sounds great, right? 22-year-old sounds fantastic. Versus all of my friends were, behind desks and cubicles, and, I'm going out and visiting people, meeting in person and going to yards. I thought it was just, you put your recyclables in the blue bin at the end of your driveway, and then poof, it magically turns into something new. I had no idea that there was this whole commodity trading world behind of it. And the blue bin is such a small fraction of what the recycling world actually is. The majority of what we recycle, especially in the United States, since we're very a scrap rich country, is industrial recycling. It's coming from the automotive industry that, every time that they stamp out a hood of a car or a car part, there's residual metal left behind that they're not going to just send to the landfill. That's value. There's a financial benefit to taking that material and reusing it. And so it's fantastic to see careers that exist that help the planet, but also are a financial benefit to companies to be able to get a little bit of their raw material costs back in the form of recycled materials.
Yeah, I think what we have learned recently, talking with more and more of our customers about kind of what they're looking for, what their journey, what their targets are, is they find it important to see if they can get their scrap back into their own product. So really what we call kind of closing the loop with them. So we purchase scrap, we purchase some prime as well, and then we create the product for them. We send it to them. They use it, stamp it, put it in their product, and whatever scrap that they have from that, they sell back to us, and then we remelt it and just kind of continue closing this loop. So it really is interesting when you say, the can that you're holding or the hood of a car, whatever it may be, it really is. It could have been, somebody else's refrigerator, could have been your refrigerator. And now it's the car door that you drive. So it really is kind of this closing the loop on continuing to repurpose and reuse, because for us, we always say like aluminum is infinitely recyclable, like continuously recycling that so that you don't have to have more of that taken out of the earth's crust and turned into aluminum. So for us, really increasing the amount and then working with our customers to say, hey, can we change how much prime we put in there so we can lower the carbon footprint, because it is very carbon intensive, right, to take the bauxite out of the ground and turn that into aluminum. And our customers, they are so inquisitive, and they're all starting this sustainability journey. I think we can all attest to that, seeing how many sustainable jobs are out there. But from a recycling perspective, they are interested in, can they get their own scrap back into their own product and say, hey, listen, in this product, our own scrap in here has been put in, tenfold times.
That's really great to hear that there are companies out there that are recognizing that they have the opportunity to reuse what they're generating, the extras that they're generating that maybe don't fit necessarily into whatever mold. There's a little bit extra, whatever the process is that produces it. It's fantastic to see that that's being thought about now, because in the past, it seems like, decades ago, I would say, not as much of a factor. It was kind of an afterthought probably for some of these companies, but now they have the opportunity to say, no, we're trying to make sure that we're not going to produce any waste, and any of the waste that we do produce, we're going to make sure that we can reuse it somehow. And so it's obviously happening in Europe, it's happening here in the United States and some other countries around the world. And so it's really great to see the global community trying to come together and really address these issues, but it's also a financial benefit for these companies as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think even now we've started to explore, post-consumer scrap, because that's something that's a little more difficult with, post-industrial. It's a little bit easier. You don't have all the use out of whatever product you're trying to recycle. But post-consumer is much more difficult. And I think, you touched on it earlier, kind of the blue bin and throwing it in there. But then what happens with it? Does it need to be sorted? I think for me, being in this industry of aluminum now over the last several years, I've really learned it's not just a type of aluminum. There's lots of different, what we call alloys in there, and not everybody uses the same alloys. Every customer is different. So you've got to be able to create these alloys and then stay in those specs. So what happens if it's, post-consumer? What is in there that is deterring you from reusing it? So is it a different alloy? Is it a different chemical makeup? Does it have something on there that you can't use? Has it been painted? Is there a plastic on it? How do you take that and really separate these materials that have been bonded together? And I think about that from like a flexible packaging, like a Capri Sun. So how do you pull that aluminum and that plastic apart? And are there technologies around that? Who's looking at that? Is that something, that a customer is trying to focus on, or is there a committee? So that, I think, is really something new in the US, is trying to figure that out, because that is becoming increasingly more important, especially in the US, where everything for us is so convenient, right? We want everything kind of in a to-go box and quick and fast. And then how do we reuse that instead of just tossing it away?
Absolutely. For the everyday person that maybe is not familiar with some of the terms that you threw out there, the aluminum world essentially has a different alloy. So it's the same metal, but it has a different makeup with different elements in there, right? So there might be a little bit higher copper, a little bit more silicon, something along those lines to basically make it up. So the aluminum that goes into manufacturing an airplane is going to be different than the aluminum that goes into an aluminum beverage can, which, for a fun fact, there's two alloys that are in the aluminum beverage can, because you have strong but flexible walls, but then you need a rigid top. So what happens when you take that aluminum can from the blue bin or from wherever that somebody, as a post-consumer, used it, maybe there's a little bit of liquid still in there, right? Maybe it got wrapped with a little bit of plastic on the outside to make a really beautiful design for whichever company was selling it. But then how do you deal with that when it needs to come back into the furnace? Because for those that don't know, moisture does not play nice with aluminum. It's very dangerous. It can cause really reactive explosions, to be honest. And so we want to make sure that part of our sustainability movement, and especially in the United States, is also to make sure that we're safe for individuals. So I'm sure you probably have a lot of safety measures that go into play. There are, I'm imagining, strict guidelines in terms of what you can purchase and how it shows up to your facilities as well.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, safety is, our number one priority surrounding everything, not just the purchase of what type of aluminum we purchase or what type of scrap we're bringing in, because again, you talked about it, the water there. I mean, it expands 1,700 times from the size of a marble to a soccer ball, really. And that creates huge explosions. I've seen videos even out there, when we talk about safety of molten metal, and it is incredible to see what just such a small drop of water can do. So safety is really high on our list when we're looking at what types of scrap we can purchase. So we try to tend to steer away from like tubes that are folded, because there could be water in there. Looking at technologies to maybe even heat that up so that you kind of are drying out any heat in there, or any water really that's left in the scrap. And then having scrap storages so that it's not out in the weather. So there's a lot of focus around scrap and the safety of purchasing it. But even within our facilities, I mean, when you walk through some of our facilities, like you can see how the priority on safety and the focus around that is, from everything that folks are wearing from a PPE, right? The personal protection equipment that you're wearing, everything from fireproofing, gloves and the shields that you're wearing, every jacket that you have on, the boots, making it a safety priority around them, because you're going to have this at some point, knock on wood, hopefully it's not a fatality when it happens, but it just makes us look at our processes and procedures and to say, hey, this is something that we've identified as a risk. We need to take this risk down. And for us, maybe it's not buying folded tubes that could have water in there. But I think safety is really important when it comes to any of the metals that you're working with. You have not only sharp edges, you have molten metal that's out there. And what we always tell when we have visitors that come in, right? Aluminum looks the same, whether it's hot or cold. Don't touch anything. Keep your hands in your pocket.
Yes, absolutely. I've worked at numerous steel mills and toured several aluminum secondaries and smelters in my day. And you can't describe the heat that comes off of the furnace. And then also when the finished product is cooling, it looks the same, right? But then if you get close enough, you can feel the heat and you can even see, the waves of heat coming off of it. It's really quite incredible what we're able to do as humans to be able to essentially manipulate these metals that come out of the Earth's crust into usable products for our everyday lives, but the process to get them there is quite intensive.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just visited a scrap recycling, kind of a rotary furnace, and to see what they're doing in these rotary furnaces, are spinning with this molten metal in there. And again, it's like standing in front of the sun. I always go back to that. And everybody's walking around with so many layers of clothes on. They look like the kid from the Christmas Story there with the jackets on. But that's such a safety precaution. And that's important because if we don't have folks that are working in this industry, because it's not a safe aspect, then we can't move forward by making products that are necessary for everyday life. So the safety of that molten aluminum or molten metal really in any facility, really, and the safety around the people is just such a high priority.
As a personal note, I do feel that molten aluminum is probably one of the prettiest metals that are out there. It almost looks like it's silver.
Yes.
As it goes across, it shimmers. It's really beautiful to see in person, but it's something that you absolutely have to respect and realize that it's something that could be quite dangerous in that form. So it's wonderful to hear that companies like Granges Americas is taking the necessary precautions, having the safety measures in place to make sure that we can have a healthy, sustainable movement going in these manufacturers so that this can continue to be able to use the world's resources efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about that molten metal, when I see it, even I think about folks ask me, like, what do you do for work? And trying to explain to them what molten metal looks like. I always say, like, have you seen Terminator where he just lowers himself down into that vat? But it is really pretty. I've seen on social media, even some folks who do these at-home things, which absolutely nobody should be doing, but they're pouring molten aluminum kind of in those ore beads, those water beads, and they pour it down in there. And it makes me, just cringe under my skin to see them doing that. Because again, you're mixing water and molten aluminum that is, 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a complete no-no.
I've seen very similar videos and they're fascinating to watch, but my heart is racing of, is this going to be a video that goes viral because something not great happens at the end?
Yeah.
What are you working on currently? What are you working on at this moment? Is there something that you're looking ahead to help increase the sustainable movement at Granges Americas? Is there something that you would like to share on that front?
Yeah, I think on the sustainability forefront, the biggest thing for us is really working on reducing our carbon footprint. And the easiest way for us to do that is by increasing our recycled content. So we capture all of our scopes. So we really are capturing this cradle to gate footprint all the way upstream, right, from our suppliers. And then looking at how can we reduce that. So we focus on the scope 1 and scope 2 in the US. We have natural gas much more readily available. So we utilize that for a lot of our equipment. But then we purchase the electricity, and we've actually signed 2 solar agreements now with 2 of our facilities for renewable solar for the electricity. So that's a great win for us over the last year. And then on really the total carbon footprint, we've reduced that in the last several years by about 33% since we've started measuring that. And for us, we've been able to achieve that by increasing our scrap. We recognize that scrap has such a small carbon footprint versus primary. So we've increased that. Goodness, I think last year we ended at about 48%. So half of all the metal that we purchase to make our products is recycled. It's RSI, it's recycled scrap, it's closed loop that we talked about earlier from our customers. So we have increased that, and our aspirations are hopefully by 2030 to bring that even lower, to really say that we've reduced it by almost half since our baseline. And then we did submit our science-based target initiative. So having those aspirations to be at net zero by 2040.
Wow, that's incredibly impressive. I really appreciate what you're doing. The sustainable movement is here. It's here in manufacturing, and it's really something that companies can use to their advantage, as well as not just having a wonderful benefit for the environment overall. So it's really wonderful to hear that Granges America is really making that a priority.
Yeah, I think we've started to see it and hear the chatter around it. You know, we said when sustainability kind of takes root with companies, I think it's going to be really quick. It's going to be this kind of landslide that happens, and everybody's going to be running towards these goals. And we've started to see it. We've had, customers come to us and ask us about our journey and what are we doing, and how did we get into this, and how do we report it, and what are we capturing? So it's been really interesting to see, and it's really kind of snowballed over, I would say, probably the last 2 years, from the time I kind of took the role and started looking at all of these factors until now. It has really been a snowball. They're asking so many questions, and we continue to move down the path of, making our operations more efficient. We achieved our ASI certification, both on our own operations and upstream last year. So that was a great win for us. So now we can say that really we have 3 facilities in the US that follow, the guidelines to say you're doing the things that are sustainable for the environment, for your products, and really for your own operations, including what are we doing for our people? Because it's important that sustainability covers not only just the environment and the products that we make, but it covers, the things that we do for safety, for just having diversity in our workforce. That's important. Those are measurements that we measure because it's important. I mean, we even measure how many women that we have still. Because that is also important for us, that we have more folks in this industry and that we continue to do good things, because the younger generation, they care about this. And so when we hire folks that are younger, that's one of the things that they've looked at, and they've researched you, and they say, we see that you are sustainable and you're moving in that direction, and we want to work for a company that's doing the same thing. So it is important to the younger generation. I think sometimes when we talk with some folks that have been raised in this industry, they don't necessarily see all the benefits, but I think that just takes education, because if you would have told somebody, I think 60 years ago that, we would have been having podcasts in today's world, that you could talk to somebody on the other side of the world, they would have laughed at us, right? Because that technology just wasn't there. So I think the older generation is coming around as they get more educated as to why we're doing it. Why is it important? What difference is it going to make for them? And for new technologies, new customers, the next generation coming around, I think they really come around to that.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that this particular episode lands, in their inbox, online, or whatever social media channel that they're following out there, because
it will be forwarded to them by their, their teenager that's in high school. That's how they'll hear about it.
Exactly. It's been such a pleasure having you on here today. It's really been educational. It's been wonderful to hear about your experience, how you got into it, what Granges America is doing on the sustainable front. So I really appreciate you, Rosa, the VP of Sustainability for Granges Americas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jennifer.